it just kind of happened in the flow of the game. They may have been targeting 80, but it wasn't a specific record that they were trying to get. You know, for who Kobe Bryant is, and everybody knows who Kobe Bryant is. And for him to no longer be alive and understand his value and importance to this game, to me, for Spoelstra and everybody on that squad, to target that was really disrespectful. I get the competition, I get the game, but you know, if it was Michael Jordan or, like I said, Elgin Baylor or one of those Wilt things, I get it. But Kobe's situation is different, man. You know, we're still feeling his absence. So for him to have that and you unnaturally target that, that's you. When do you become a human being and take that in consideration? Like, when do you like, you know what? No, I'm not. You know, I'll get 80, but I'm not gonna. You know, I'm not gonna purposely do that. Like, if it just happens, that's cool. But we don't go out of our way to. You shouldn't do that out of respect.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzer with you, the voice of NBA Jam. From top journalists and authors to rising influencers and insiders, Hoopsology brings you the voices driving basketball forward. With elite guests and sharp analysis, Matt, Justin, and Alan keep you plugged into everything hoops. From downtown, boom shakalaka.
For making a time, and awesome. It's obviously great timing just in terms of what happened recently as a recording of this podcast with Bam Adebayo scoring 83 points against the Wizards, second most in NBA history. Just your overall thoughts, a lot of just conjecture on the internet, I'm sure in barbershops, workplaces, etc., and really making some noise in the sports world. What are your thoughts on this accomplishment?
I like the energy it brought, and I'm not throwing troll or shade at, you know, Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal by saying that there was no energy in Miami. I'm just saying I just like the energy that it brought, you know, especially after what possibly could have been the game of the year in the NBA between Oklahoma City and Denver the night before, with Shea and Jokic going at it back and forth in such a tight, meaningful game. So to follow that up with Bam, you know, having the game he had, I thought it was great. But I also like the other end. I liked all the conversation, and I like the asterisk, you know, narrative that seems to be floating around that everybody wants to attach to Bam's achievement. So from a hoop fan, I liked all of it because of the way it fell in place, and I understand all the conversation. And it's you know, I'm not one of those people that believe that all drama is good drama, you know, but I do like the fact that we're not, or the public is not just allowing Bam's game to go without some type of challenge. Because there's a lot of room, not on his part, I mean, he did what he did, you know, but there's a lot of room to like challenge, not the legitimacy of what he did from a scoring standpoint, but where this places in the overall performance standpoint, and where we should accept this place in history. I think everything on that, the way that game unfolded and how that happened, is fair play, and I appreciate that challenge.
So where do you think it belongs in history?
That's a great thing, because I'm not trying to answer your question with a question, but I'll ask you this. Are we only saying in applying these performances and these historical performances to the lane of scoring? You know, because
that's a good point.
If we're getting technical, when Norman Powell said to Bam on the court last night, you know, what do you feel about your name, you know, basically being in between Wilt and Kobe's on this? And Bam's response was, it's one of the three greatest performances of all time. He used the word performance. Now, just because you score the second or third amount of points doesn't mean that that's in the greatest performance, because there's importance of the game involved. There's defense involved. There's, you know, big plays involved that could have swung the game. There's rebounding. There's assists. There's so many things that go into overall performances, you know, that we have to consider where we're talking about places in history. Now, if we're only talking about scoring, that's a whole different conversation. You know, I think David Haberstrom of USA Today did a great piece today about the games that should have asterisks on them for those that scored over 70 points. And basically, anybody in the history of NBA that scored over 70 points, he gave an asterisk to. And he broke down reason as to why. It was brilliantly written and it was hilarious at the same time. But it also made you think like, damn, that might be, there's some validation to all of this, So like I said, I'm not trying to answer your question with a question, but you're saying where does it go in the place of history? I'm asking you, are we talking about scoring or are we talking about performance? It's two different things.
Yeah, it's funny. You bring that up and it kind of, the wheels in my head are turning. And I think about, if you're thinking about performance, then I'm thinking like, it's got to be like Michael's flu game, right? Circumstances, big shots, big stage. I don't know. That's my thought right there. The first thing that popped in my head.
Kind of just continue to bring up the Michael conversation, but it's like the not just the flu game, but the Celtics game. Where he dropped 63. Which it was a record against Celtics, but the importance of the game, what they did for that team, the game against Cleveland, that game 5. I mean, everything was on the line in that game. Hell, let's look at Kawhi Leonard. Like, put Kawhi's whole playoff run to get Toronto that championship above what happened last night. We can start picking games of what Kawhi did. Kawhi single-handedly took a team through, 3 rounds, and carried them. I mean, I can look at performances of Dwayne Wade from game 3 to game 6 in that finals against Dallas. We was averaging over 40 points a game. We can look at Bernard King against Detroit in 1984 where he averaged, we could go for performances. I'm talking about the legendary great Isaiah Thomas' performance against the Los Angeles Lakers where he scored 26 in the 4th quarter on a damn near broken ankle just to force a game 7,
Like versus Robinson.
Walt Frazier is the game we talk about as far as performance is that legendary Willis Reed game. Willis only scored 4 points. Let's talk about Walt Frazier's performance in that game. I think it was like 42, 17 or something. It was crazy. Yeah, we need to really be specific on how we start labeling this thing in the context of history. And if we're talking about performance or if we're talking about scoring. 2 different things, I think.
Yeah, those are all good points. And I mean, that's a great trip down memory lane. As you're talking, right, I'm thinking of all those and thinking of that. I'm thinking of Hakeem versus David Robinson, when he juked him all over the court. You go back to, performances. I think you've got a valid point there. Is there's scoring, but then there's all the stuff that matters and wins games.
Right. And once again, and I don't want to take away from anything. I mean, games have purposes, so I want to put this in the context. So I don't want to just say the game have to matter to have a great performance. I think Kobe Bryant's last game in the history of his career was that 60-point game. The game didn't mean anything, but the performance meant everything. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to get into context. I'm only talking about performances that have something to do where the game actually matters. No, I would take Kobe's 60-point game over Bam's 83. I thought the performance was greater and the magnitude of what it meant had more meaning, even though the game was necessarily meaningless, So I think there's all that conversation, and I hate to get hung up on words, but words matter. So you asked a question about its place in history. I'm answering that with what lane are we putting this in, because Bam used the word performance. You know what I'm saying? I think those are 2 different things. I think scoring-wise, that's up for argument. It could be top 5, more than likely top 10. But performance, I don't know. I can't say in history where it lands because there's so much stuff to consider, in that circumstance. Especially if we get to the breakdown of how it actually happened, how it actually happened, because, and that's why I think, not necessarily an asterisk, but I think this Republican conversation is going to be interesting, how it rears itself out 20 years from now. What are we going to remember? What are we going to recollect? What are we going to continue to bring up? Are we going to bring up the fact that, they targeted this number? Like they were going after something with nothing on the line except for trying to beat a certain number. Are the 43 foul shots going to be considered? Are the shooting less than 50% going to be remembered? Are we going to keep in mind that probably the last 5 to 3 minutes of the game it looked like WWE, like it wasn't really even real. You know, those are certain things that are going to be interesting to see how it plays itself out in this context of history, because if history does, you know, kind of what it's supposed to do and keep some semblance of accuracy, then all these things are going to be remembered. And not that there should be an asterisk next to Bam Adebayo's number, because he technically did score 83 points, but in the way it happened, you know, is going to be interesting. And also, I think that the one thing that may be held against him in this, which is really out of his control, was who they targeted and why they decided to do that. Like when Kobe scored 81, they weren't targeting Wilt or targeting Elgin Baylor. It just kind of happened in the flow of the game. They may have been targeting 80, but it wasn't a specific record that they were trying to get. You know, for who Kobe Bryant is, and everybody knows who Kobe Bryant is. And for him to no longer be alive and understand his value and importance to this game, to me, for Spoelstra and everybody on that squad, to target that was really disrespectful. I get the competition, I get the game, but you know, if it was Michael Jordan or, like I said, Elgin Baylor or one of those Wilt things, I get it. But Kobe's situation is different, man. You know, we're still feeling his absence. So for him to have that and you unnaturally target that, that's you. When do you become a human being and take that in consideration? Like, when do you like, you know what? No, I'm not. You know, I'll get 80, but I'm not gonna. You know, I'm not gonna purposely do that. Like, if it just happens, that's cool. But we don't go out of our way to. You shouldn't do that out of respect for him. And it's, you know, and his place. That's, to me, that's what I think is gonna be the biggest thing that he's gonna have to deal with historically. That's the one thing I think the public is not going to forget. They're gonna remember to a certain degree that this didn't happen just by nature. You all targeted going after Kobe after he died. And that's just not cool. You know what I'm saying? It's going to come off. It's not cool right now. It's definitely not going to be cool 20 years from now.
So would you equate this to what happened with Michael Strahan with the sack record? Seeing that online, that kind of comparison where it's kind of artificially, where Brett went down and Michael Strahan, he got it, but like he Favre gave it to him. Like it wasn't in a course of a natural play progression. It was kind of like, we want him to have the record, give him the record.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think an opponent doing that is, to me, a little different. And the person he took the record from didn't hold, in my mind, the same reverence that Kobe did. You know what I'm saying? I think Kobe's, it's still too fresh, man. You know what I'm saying? To me, it's still too fresh. His death impacted the entire culture and sport of basketball. You know, to this day, where he's probably, without question, going to be remembered as the most influential player to ever touch a basketball. That's including Michael and Wilt and Bill Russell. And a lot of that has to do of how he died, when he died, what he left behind, and what we didn't get a chance to see in his post-basketball life. You know, there's deep connective tissue to Kobe's death that's still very, 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 very real. And to be on a court where that's still felt, where players are still literally wearing this man's shoes and honoring him, for you not to be innocent enough to keep that in mind of what you're doing it's hard to swallow that. That's kind of getting in. And it's hard to make that comparison with Michael Strahan, because there's so much more context to this, I think, than when Michael Strahan broke that sack record. You know, and to me, it's a little bit different.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit, because there's something, as I'm a former Chicago, I lived there for a little while, so I've always had a soft spot in my heart for the Bulls. Looking at the trade deadline with the Bulls and what that one is doing.
Are you the only one out here with a soft spot for them?
I don't have a soft spot. I'm a Bulls fan. My heart's cold. Yeah.
What's the plan? What is the plan?
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question that I'm not dismissing your question, but I'm answering your question with a question and asking you. You're asking me, and just as you asked yourself, I'm pretty sure, what's the plan? Do you think they know the plan as an organization?
That's
Honestly.
my worry. That's my worry, is that they don't know what they're doing.
Okay, so you're leaning on the side of that, right? So you're asking the question. So if I'm like, you're asking me what the plan, you ask yourself, how do we know what the plan is if they don't know what the plan is? They're the source. So any answer I give you is going to be a lie. Any answer you give yourself is going to be a lie, because in our minds, from what they're showing us, from the outside looking in, they don't know what the plan is. It's like they don't even have a plan. Like, there's a difference between not knowing a plan and not even having a plan. They're functioning as if they don't even have a plan. So I'm not trying to not answer your question, but I don't have an answer for you, because in order to give you some type of factual answer, we have to have something to work with. We have to have some truth coming from them about them knowing what their plan is. And they haven't shown anything, and they damn sure haven't said anything close to explaining to us what their plan was and what it is moving forward.
So how are they supposed to be held accountable? Because I've talked to several other journalists, my friends here, on the show. It just seems like, Chicago is a top city within the NBA, has a great fan base, and yet I don't think the front office are held to a standard to be accountable for their terrible actions. And you mentioned even having a plan. I felt that way even with Lonzo Ball and Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan, even though that was a pretty decent squad. I felt like still didn't have a plan. It was kind of, I guess, let's see if it works. I felt like there's really no direction in that regard when it gets signed all those free agents. And now it's just deteriorated to this point.
Here's
So
I think, to your point, I'm gonna get inside to what you're saying. I think they had a plan setting up. What they didn't have a plan for and what they didn't function after that was when Lonzo got hurt.
Agreed.
They didn't have a backup plan for who they're going to replace at point guard to carry the load. Now, here's the thing. This is coming from an organization who, if any coach in the history of the Bulls organization gave you a blueprint of how to keep things functioning at some level when your point guard goes down, and what Thibodeau did. Thibodeau did not replace Derrick Rose, but every point guard, whether it's John Lucas III, Nick Robinson, whoever, everybody came in and had to play the best basketball of their lives in replacing Derrick Rose. Same situation with Lonzo Ball. He comes in, gets hurt. There was no John Lucas III that followed up with. You know what I'm saying? There was no Nate Robinson. And I'm missing somebody else. Who am I missing? Augustine. No, is yeah. They never, ever brought anybody up to play or replace them. They just filled in the blank and waited for Lonzo to come back. Filled in the blank. So they didn't even have a plan for that. So if you use that as the foundation to where we are right now, that's a much smaller problem than dealing with the plan for how the whole team is going to function. This is one position, even though it's a different general manager, different president, it's still all organizational. For you to let that Lonzo Ball situation basically last for 4 years and never, ever have a plan to fix that, why are we expecting them to come up with a plan for the whole thing?
That's true. Yeah. No, it's just, it's frustrating. Alan and Matt are our other co-hosts. They know this anger. Every time you talk about this team, it's just baffling to me. I'm just
it's sad. And to your thing about accountability, and I'm being pretty facetious here, but it's legitimate, and I would kind of include myself, but where are the Nick Fidels in this situation where you need them? Because even though Nick's a good friend of mine, I was not 100% appreciative of the way he went after Kyrie Irving with the, film posting stuff. Which I mean, I get and I understand it from his standpoint, but my question on that is, where was that same type of dogness in that same space? If he was in, why didn't anybody go at Steve Kerr like that and how he treated Jonathan Kuminga? Where's the media doing their job in this? And I'll say the same thing here. Where's the media's job in really, really holding the Bulls front office, to those same standards? Where's the quote unquote Nick Fidel in this situation? That's there every day demanding answers from this.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, they need to. But I think also that there's this thing of apathy that's come over the media here in Chicago when dealing with this organization because of what we've seen over the last 4 years. You know, like this is the first time, and I just did a column on it. This is the first time we're like, damn, we thought we had it bad, for the last few years. Who knew it was gonna get to this rock bottom? We'll take the last 4 years if over this right here. We were complaining about mediocrity and apathy. We'll take that. We want that back now. But I think because of the way they function over the last 4 years and really, really, really just embracing at any turn just the mid and everything, that we've become, almost cool with that. And we as a media have stopped really caring about them. They've given us nothing to care for. So, yes, we should be more accountable in how we approach them and trying to get answers to see if they do have a plan. But why? It's almost like, why are you asking the question if you know the answer is going to be full of shit?
That's fair.
Do you feel like the fan base is going through the same stuff then too? Just kind of apathy, or they're just done with it, or what's kind of the temperature of the fan base?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I think that question is so great because I think it's one of those answers that's not binary. I think it's an answer of percentages. I think you're probably dealing with maybe 70% of the fans are like done, but there's that 30% that aren't done. And I'm gonna break it down further. I think 70% in each fan is probably done, but there's still that 30% that's still in there, that still like leans in, because nobody really wants to turn on the players because they know what the players are up against. They know how bad this has been. I think it's gotten to the situation from a fan base standpoint that they probably don't even want certain players to come here to save their careers. It's like, oh, we got a chance to get that. You're like, no, Drew, don't come here. Don't stay away from here. Don't do that. Retire before you come to play in this jersey, And I think that's kind of the existence of a fan where they're like, we're done with this. We're through with it, but we don't want to take that out on the players. It's strictly front office, it's Mark, it's AK, it's Jerry and Michael. I'm not gonna not wish, Ayo Dosunmu well. I'm not gonna wish Nikolai Vukovic well. I'm not gonna, wish. Well, I don't know if anybody's wishing Patrick Williams well, but I don't want to, I don't want to not wish Kobe White well. I think there are certain players that they're like, even if it wasn't just came here, like Ivy, we got nothing against you. Rob Dillingham, we got nothing against you. We want you all to continue to do well here. We like you all as players. Y'all are Giddy. Matas, we want you all to, hey, do your thing. And I don't want to throw shade at Pat Williams. Pat's doing Pat, so we're not mad at him. They want him to do well. It's the front office. So as a fan, that's why I think they're split. I think there's that percentage split inside of every fan where they're like, I'm done with this team, but I don't want to take that out on the players. That's not fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I feel that way. I've always thought that the players are doing the best they can. It's just the incompetence around them that's, I think, sabotaging their growth, unfortunately.
Look, man, I think, and this is really, really tough, I think fans are even sympathetic to Billy Donovan. Like, I think over the last, where we've seen him not do what we feel that he's capable of, this thing, especially right now, and I really think it came into fruition, like, after this last trading deadline, that we're like, damn, we can't even blame Billy. He's a victim just like everybody else in this situation. And I think Billy Donovan has gotten empathy now, like, damn, Billy, we feel bad for you too, So,
No.
like, I think that's and I've had a lot of conversations. Like, I've talked to people who don't even like Billy Donovan, that want him to leave for him. Like, Billy, get out of here, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, get out of here while you can. Like, at the end of the season, understand what you're really up against. Go. Not that we don't want you here. You shouldn't have to deal with this any longer, And that's, you know how tough that is when, a non-fan favorite coach is getting empathy in Chicago.
Yeah, it's bad.
That's when you know it's bad. That's when you know it's bad. Yep.
No, Totally agree. Goop, thank you very much for your time. Truly appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where they can catch your work? Also, where you're located on social media, any upcoming projects as well?
Work is always in Chicago Sun-Times, usually online Friday for the Sunday column. That's in print in the paper. That's usually consistent. And it's just, social media. Of course, I have platforms, but I'm not one to promote any of my stuff. So anything I'm doing, I always post there. And as far as project is concerned, Derrick Rose and I just got through finishing up a book project. Basically, the story of his life is called The Blueprint. It's actually coming out next week officially. You can order it at Acioni. Asaloni.com. It's called The Blueprint, but it's actually coming in stores, I think, March 16th. So that's the most recent project. And, Pooh and I were able to get together and, tell his life story in a 300-page, 6-pound, $120 book.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on putting that together. I long for those days with Derrick Rose.
Yeah. But you know what? What's good? We all do. But it's the most amazing thing of watching him then, and watching his evolution into the person that he's becoming. What's happening in his post-basketball life? That's what's that's the good thing. That's the good thing. And for those who were fans of his, I think everything he went through dealing with basketball at the NBA level, we glad he got through with it, and that dark cloud found a way to relieve, and now he can keep moving into some light, and he didn't have to carry that type of weight on him. Because I still don't believe there's any other athlete who's had to deal with the career that he had to, as far as injury and taking away what injuries took away from him. And talking to him, I know that's, you're asking for a young man to go through literally a decade of straight torture, and the fact that he didn't give up is something to say about him. So I think there's a happiness now, but we do wish for the days of him, but that's our selfishness. For him, man, we glad you get to do something else and, get all that behind you. You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
You now. And that's what I think most of the Derrick Rose fans are happy to see.
That's true. He seems at peace, which...
Very much so. Yeah. Basketball was a gift and a curse for him. Unlike many other athletes, it's almost like a thing of torture, where you love something so much and you believe that that part of the reason you're here on this earth is to do this one thing, and for that one thing to continually be taken away from you in the cruelest manner. But for you not to lose love for that, and for you to not develop hate towards anybody or the game itself, because of what it gave you, but also what it took away, and I'm not trying to make this long, and that's something I never asked him. I wonder, does he feel that basketball gave him more, or took away? You know what I'm saying? I wonder what. Yeah, I wonder what goes on through his head in that, because you're dealing with technically, because you don't start your basketball journey once you get to the NBA. Your basketball journey starts real early, and then he started at 4 years old, right? So between 4 and the time he had his first the injury against the Sixers. Yeah, what's that? We're talking maybe almost 20 years. He's maybe 18, 19 years, because at 4, he wasn't 24. I don't think he was 24 years old yet. Maybe he's 23, maybe?
Yeah.
So somewhere around 20 years. So you built up a love, an unconditional love relationship with something for 24 years. For 20 years, right? Then he retired at 36. So those next 12 years are the exact opposite of that for you. So now you're going through a divorce that is like some War on the Roses stuff. You know what I'm saying? Where there should be level of hatred because of the relationship now. How do you still, at the end of that, find peace? You know what I'm saying? This says a lot with you of the type of human being that you are. Because basically everything you loved in your mind over those last 12 years, you had to feel that it betrayed you and turned on you. You have to feel that way.
That's true.
Yeah.
Especially
so,
when...
I never asked him about that.
Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see how he felt about that and how he feels about that. But once again, it's our selfishness, I think, that brings us back to man. The days of when, in all reality, he could be more happier now than he's ever been in his life, because, like you said, the weight's been lifted off him, the pressure's been lifted off him. He could just, for the first time in his life, just live, man. Just live without torture, live without expectation, just live, man, and breathe. So We'll see.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. Because I remember him on other teams, and you have glimpses of just like the old Derrick Rose, and it's just kind of, but he's not fully back. So
Yeah.
I just couldn't imagine what he's going through. Just it wasn't even like a huge decline. It was like ups and downs,
Yeah.
and just the emotional roller coaster. I couldn't imagine.
Injuries just kept coming. It wasn't the same thing. It wasn't like crying like a Bill Walton type of thing. It was always something different. It's like, goodness gracious, what is this? You know?
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's cruel. Like once you get one thing done, it's always something else that comes around the corner. It's like, damn, dude, you know, how does this keep happening to one individual? And I still believe, and I'll argue with anybody to this day, that I think from a basketball perspective, you know, he is the greatest what if the history of basketball has ever seen because of what he achieved, you know, and, you know, being the youngest, you know, ever MVP of the league. But if you look at his journey even before that, what he was able to uphold through his journey to get to where he became that person. You know, nothing against the Penny Hardaways or the, you know, Bernard Kings or even the, you know, the Bill Waltons of the world. You know, it's something about what his continual injuries, not just one. That's what I'm saying. It's the what if. His continual injuries did to him, and the promise that it took away. You know, yeah. To me, from an NBA standpoint, he's always going to be the greatest what if. You know, and let me throw this caveat in there. And I only say that because we didn't get to see Len Bias actually play in the NBA.
Exactly.
And you know, and the same thing can be said about Ben Wilson, you know. But we got to see Derrick Rose. So there's no, we know what he could have become. We saw, but the problem is we saw the beginning of what he could become at that top level. That's what makes it different, you know? That's what makes it different and makes him the greatest what if.
I totally agree. Scoop, thank you very much for your time. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Appreciate the conversation. Hey, stop. You better get cold-hearted with them Bulls, man. Stop that soft-hearted stuff. Stop all that. They don't deserve it.
Right. I've been trial traumatized into the house.
They don't just look. The way this thing goes, love has to be reciprocal. You throw out that type of love, you have to get it back.
That's true.
All right. I was the top it out.
Appreciate you, Scoop. Thank you.
All right, fellas. Good seeing y'all. Thanks again.
Thank you.